and we thank you and appreciate you and acknowledge your presence. Every day, how we start the hour is by looking at what we are tracking in the news. Our news fix for this hour, Mariam?
It's about former Kiambu Governor Ferdinand Waititu, which is exactly what we're also discussing right now with our guest in studio. But basically, he was, of course, found guilty of corrupt dealings, and that was alongside his wife, Susan Wangari, and 3 others. They are set to be sentenced today at 10:30 a.m. The 5 were found guilty in a corruption case involving 588 million shillings. Like I said, quite a substantial amount for the taxpayers of Kiambu and the nation as a whole. Waititu and his wife, Susan Wangari, on Wednesday asked the court for forgiveness and a non-custodial sentence, citing their roles as parents with dependents. The couple, alongside businessman Charles Chege and his wife Beth Wangeshi and former Kiambu County Roads Chief Officer Luka Mwangi, were found guilty of conflict of interest and dealing with suspect property in a 588 million shilling graft trial. And they spent the night at Capitol Hill Police Station. Their plea to the court that they be given a non-custodial sentence because they are parents with dependents.
Yeah.
What we're going to see wazazi kwani I'm so
Mariam is like, do I finish where
do I let my intrusive thoughts
usichukulie personal.
What we're going to see wazazi
ndio kila mtu ni usichukulie personal. They just did that, you know. You are allowed. They were allowed to do that. Okay. So let's see whether the court will actually listen to them. Okay. But let's get into that conversation because we want to look at that in greater detail. So what does that mean? Is this an opportunity? This is a former governor who has been found guilty, investigated, prosecuted, court case goes all the way to the end. No withdrawal of charges at any point, goes to the end, and court finds them guilty. Not many of such cases do we see coming from the judiciary. So is this a cause for celebration or is it not? That's why we're joined this morning by Dr. Kawive Wambua. He is the executive director of an organization called Inuka Kenya Nisisi. I put the comma, or it should. Inuka, comma, Kenya Nisisi, exclamation mark.
Because Kenya is ours.
Yeah. Okay. Is that what it means? Inuka Kenya Nisisi is yes. Rise up.
So that it is
arise. This is our country.
We need to arise together because this is our country. We've got to fix it. We got to, like you say, fix it. But also that we should not be superintended by others because this is our country. We don't want politicians
tusipangwe.
As Kenyans, we need to wake up, know what we want, and get it done.
Very good, very good. And also, your organization is a part of an alliance, the National Integrity Alliance.
Yes, the National Integrity Alliance, ourselves, TI Kenya, Transparency International Kenya, Kenya Human Rights Commission, and others, where we join together to say, how do we track integrity and the practice of the same in the country? How we do programs like red carding, doing research on the conduct of politicians, people who want to seek public office. And we say, no, in 2017, for example, and even in 2022, we did a red card, and Waititu was top of the list. That you should not go anywhere near elections.
He was top of the list, like for sure?
Yes.
Or was he on the list?
Top of the list because, of course, fighting for number 1 together with Sonko, together with Aisha Juma and others.
It was a strong combined first.
Yes.
Karibu sana Daktari. To start our conversation, this lady here is called Good Girl Jano.
Oh my God. The nickname keeps expanding.
It's Good Girl Jano. And Jano Makuts.
Is that the opposite of Bad Girl Millie?
Yes.
I was about to be like, I see what you did there.
Jano Makuts is very good with looking at quotable quotes. People have said things in the past and they meant something at the point when they were being said, but maybe they're still relevant today. Right? Yeah. So listen, she's going to give us a quote and let's see if we can together figure out who she's talking to. What's the quote for today, Jan?
Janoa quotes. The quote for today is probably one that we've all heard before, especially he's probably heard it because of the line of work that he does. But I do think it really is important to what we're talking about today. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Who said that?
Injustice?
I know I didn't give, usually I give a hint as to who this person is, you know, and they This quote was part of a letter that was written when he was in Birmingham jail in the early 60s in the US. And he was fighting, obviously, for the rights of his people. And one of the things he penned there is he said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Remains one of my favorite quotes. I think I used it a lot during the Reject Finance Bill protest. I used it a lot when I was there in the End Femicide protests. Who said that? Anyone wants to take a guess? Let's start with our guest.
That must be Malcolm X.
So close.
Martin Luther King.
Yes. It's always one of them,
Yes,
right?
He was going with them. Like,
But I love how unapologetic they were about justice. And they had, both of them chose very different routes to it, right? Mm-hmm. There was what you would call the more radical approach, where he said, listen, if behaving nicely isn't working, we need to go full on. The other one used to say, no, we can dialogue. We can get there. And people often say to me, when you go into a room and you're going to negotiate or advocate, or you're going to try and push for change, sometimes you've got to wear the Malcolm X hat. Sometimes you have to wear the Martin Luther one. What are your thoughts on that?
I think when you go to a room to negotiate, if I start where you stopped, you carry both hats and you put them on the table so that people know you can go either way. Because really, like in this country, our Kenya, I think it's become increasingly difficult to dialogue with anybody because everybody lies to you. They look at you and then they lie. Yeah. And you're like, so now how are we supposed to talk? How are we supposed to have a dialogue when the default mode is lying? The default mode is pulling your weight. The other day we had that, if you don't have a PhD, you are stupid, so you shouldn't talk in this country. Honestly, are we going to get into that room and dialogue?
in the airport.
Airport, who are you? So the kind of situation that we have in this country is that we are, as Kenyans, we are being put down all the time. So injustice is not only visited on us physically, it is also mentally. We are sort of like being gaslighted. Every time you think, do I open my mouth? Do I qualify? How will they think? And this is the point where we need to depart as Kenyans and say, can we create our own narrative?
Right.
Can we create what I call a living narrative that sort of speaks to progress, speaks to what is right, and also documents the things that these people say, these people that we call our leaders. I'm calling them people because I think
leaders is a big word.
This humans.
Not leader. Actually, to a great extent in this country, we have misleaders, not leaders. People mislead us, left, right, and center. Yeah.
Are you more a Malcolm X or a... I already know the answer, but or a Martin Luther?
He works with both. But which one are you going?
One, yeah,
which is your default?
Which one is done?
If I'm going to my people, like in my village,
yes,
I'll work with the peace one. But if like in these spaces, in these streets of this town and in the leadership scale, it is the other one.
It is the other one.
I would like to ask you about what this means, this ruling, whether it sets a good precedence. But before that, I do want to comment on what he said. Is previously I was very big on let's talk about it, let's advocate, and I'd be in rooms and say we need to push to increase budgetary allocation for sanitary pads that girls get to school. Last year I flipped. I did. In the middle of the year I said, when I was calling myself to a meeting as to whether or not I will go out and protest against the finance bill, I asked for an hour. I was like, you've done the Martin Luther thing.
Right.
I don't know. These folks don't seem to be about dialogue. And it's not to discount that dialogue is still powerful.
Right.
But for the first time I realized, there's a time. There actually comes a time when you need to really make your case heard and known loudly. Yeah. I'm glad I was joined by hundreds and thousands of others, but for the first time, I actually took that route. So nowadays, my default isn't necessarily one. It just depends on how riled up I am. And the fear just kind of goes because you say, we've tried this before.
Yeah. We've
sat with you. The Daktari is saying, you've lied. You're like, yes, we will fix it for you. And you go home and you're like, oh, they've listened, they'll fix it. And then you wake up and you see your bills and you see everything. Anyway, I had to get that out and exhale.
But if you look at, like, for example, the statements by the Gen Zs, the protest and what they said, and then a bill is withdrawn, Then when they are sitting at home saying, let's watch out this goes, it is reintroduced. People are fired, then all of them are reappointed.
Right.
I mean, like seriously? And then the young people are killed. And now they are being disappeared. Seriously? Are those people that you want to talk to? Where will you stand as you talk? On the grave of your child? Or where?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Because people often, like you said, dialogue is wonderful, works in many ways, but there are just some times when there's just genuinely nothing to talk about. There are places you can operate from that there is no conversation worth having. But the graft conversation is one that we have been having since the beginning, or post-independence. Even before that, even the colonizers were still having their graft issues, right? A ruling came in yesterday. Former Governor, Kiambu Governor Waititu, and of course his wife and 3 others convicted of graft, 588 million shillings of taxpayers' money in the balance. Your first thoughts on this? What came to mind first?
It should have happened earlier. I think we should say thank you that the court is bold enough to take that step, because the tradition is powerful people, leave them out of this discussion. But now that bold step. But we're saying we can only look at this as a first step and say how many other steps are there. The ESCC has completed investigations in 126 cases this last year. Another 221 cases are in court. Yeah, and some of them go for as much as 2 billion. You know, so we need to see those cases fast tracked and judgments given. We've seen also in the past that cases have been withdrawn. You know, in circumstances that are not. They are not believable. The ODPP withdrew like 10 cases from Aisha Juma. I don't know, was very many people with cases. They were withdrawn without explanation.
Right.
Apparently, there was no evidence, sufficient. What is sufficient evidence? When we've lost 7.1 billion, that is not sufficient evidence.
And is it not for the prosecution to prove? Right? The burden of that evidence is put on the prosecution, which they should. But by the time you're prosecuting someone, you've decided, you know, we are charging you with this and that. Should you not have sufficient evidence, quote unquote?
Exactly. So, but the withdrawals, in my opinion, were done from a political standpoint, because you see, most of those people whose cases were withdrawn were actually appointed to political offices.
Yes. And
therefore, you read malice, you read mischief, you find that those people who were acquitted, the likes of Geoffrey Mwangi, Rigathi Gachagua, you had a 7.1 billion case, 0.3 actually. There was Aisha Juma with 19 million, Chumo with 400 million, Ken Tarus with 159 million, Rotich with 63 billion, and Okoth with 2 billion graft cases. All these cases were, like Okoth, there was a negotiation. How do you negotiate with a thief? I mean, honestly, I've stolen your all the money that you had in your pocket. And then we start negotiating.
Right.
At how much do I give back to you? And then how much do I go with? You know, it looks like a rickety dance.
I remember that case, it was the state wanted to seize the assets. And the question was, you know, keep the house, give us the cash. Keep Nina, right?
But you see, that is the wrong end of the stick. If you've stolen, you know, this corruption, even the word corruption, and we are thinking about it, is there a way of putting it in a more...
in a stronger...
Because corruption looks a bit woolly. You know, these guys are thieves.
Right.
And a thief is a thief. If you go to the village and somebody steals a chicken, they definitely will not spend the day well. They either be beaten or they will be jailed. And in jail, in court, you jailed for many years for stealing a chicken. Now, here is a guy stealing billions and we are sitting to negotiate with him.
Right.
You know, this big man culture has to end. And it all comes down from the extractive company nature of the establishment of the Kenyan state. You know, because, you know, Kenya was a company. And then the big guys were the governor. The governor, then the British governor was like the top honcho, so you had to be near him to get all that. And this tradition has come down to us. People in leadership become like, you know, the owners of the company. You remember that,
the East
that
Africa
discussion?
British
Yes,
protectorate,
East Africa Imperial British East Africa
IBM.
Company.
Yes, yes.
So, and when you had, was it Rigathi, when he was being very ebullient as a deputy governor, he said, "Dini kampuni, ukona shares." You know, surprisingly, he was right, because that's the way Kenya is run. So, a person in the top management steals billions, and we want to discuss with him? No.
And which is why I hesitate to think about whether or not this sets a good precedence, right? In fact, wasn't Waititu convicted in 2020 but still ran for office? You know, I want to believe that this sets a good precedence in dealing with corruption. So whether or not he's going to be, what his sentence will be, etc. But is it also sometimes just one case out of tens and tens of them? Does that really address the corruption issue? Waititu has been found. You've just listed so many others that are still walking scot-free. Do you think this still sets a good precedence, or is the jury still out on whether or not anything will change thereafter?
I think for us as a country, fundamentally, is that we've not been able to rein in the corruption as it is as part of statecraft. So this progressive good as it is, like a drop in the ocean. Remember, I've said there are 221 cases in court which have not been adjudged. There are 126 other that have been completed, you know, investigations that have been completed. Now they go to ODPP for filing.
Yep.
There are 56 cases of integrity, people forging degrees, people defrauding, that are still pending. So there are very many. And this is excluding those that have been withdrawn. So I think we are far, we are very far. I think even if, whatever the is now a case in court, can you comment on it before the ruling?
No.
No, but there was a ruling yesterday that they are guilty. So, however...
The Waititu case is done.
Yeah.
Right.
They have been found guilty.
It's
It's over.
now,
It's just
yeah.
the sentencing.
Yes, so I think they should be given a sentence that sort of becomes a reference point for others. To say, if that was 588 million, so the sentence should be commensurate with that amount, so that we see the one that is coming up for, is it Ochodo of 2 billion? You know, the sentence goes higher. Because if you steal a chicken, you should be jailed for 5 years, for example. If you steal a cow, you should be 10. So that then we see the corresponding weight of your crime.
Our law, which already exists, and it's quoted in this story on the Daily Nation today, it's the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, ASECA, right? It says a person convicted of the offense is liable to a fine not exceeding $1 million bob, or a term in prison not exceeding 10 years, or both. So the highest they could get is 10 years plus a $1 million shilling fine. Then it also says there's an additional mandatory fine if, as a result of the conduct that constituted the offense, the person received a quantifiable benefit or another person suffered a quantifiable loss. That mandatory fine, according to the law, shall be 2 times the amount of the benefit or loss.
So, for example, we're saying if it's 588 million,
588 million is about $1 billion.
Right.
1.2 billion.
Yeah,
Right.
1.6 billion.
1.6 billion. Yeah.
So if that's the is that sufficient? Do you think that is a good slap?
I mean, it's a deterrent, but what evidence do we have, or how can we ensure that these people are fined the 1.6 billion? Because that would be sufficient deterrent. The person who has got a case of 7 billion getting 14 billion to be refunded to the state, because somebody has suffered. The people of Kiambu have suffered loss because of the theft from Waititu. So if we look at it from the point of view of deterrent, yes, it is. But getting a fine of 1 million?
Right.
Like, seriously? You can get from the 588, you get 1. You have
That's our law,
587.
Dr. It's our law.
Yes.
Right?
Also-
We
It doesn't
passed
mean it's
it,
right.
and we've been sitting there. So what do we do to fix it?
I also want to add like a tax to this of sorts. 588 million shillings is the gain, quote unquote, but you've gained more from the 588 million, right? So
interest earned over the period.
Earned over the period. Honestly, I'm just like, because it's a quantifiable benefit from this stolen taxpayer money. So if there's a way to track it down, I think that's something that we should also talk about, because to Daktari's point, 1 million shillings for someone accused of stealing 588 is change. It's not even pocket change. I don't know what to call it, right? So then, yeah, how do we solidify it? The law is very clear, but then how do we make it punitive?
Line that you mentioned, the one about if somebody else suffered, that statement is crafted in such a way that you have to prove that somebody else suffered.
Yeah.
If somebody stole 580, what do you need to prove that the people of Kiambu suffered? It's a fact.
They suffered a loss. Yeah. It's clear that, you received a quantifiable benefit or another person suffered a quantifiable loss, which means that there is money that was supposed to have gone here that didn't go. It went to your pocket. Okay? But in this particular case, it's a kickback from a contractor. So the county pays contractor kicks back. So it's a whole thing of... was a contractor just, being sufficiently philanthropic and suffering a loss from their own job, or was it engineered all the way so that money comes from the county?
You know what
so
that means? That means that either the bribe money was inbuilt into the contract,
of course,
or the works were reduced in tandem with the money that was given.
There was a compromise somewhere.
Yes. So if it was a road, then the standards of the road, of course, were lower than expected. And if it was a contract being, topped up with that amount, it means that money was actually siphoned from the county coffers. So people suffered. And the problem with that is that, the problem with that particular phrase is that you have to prove it, that there was actually people who suffered directly. But when money is being stolen from the port, do you say you directly suffered? You have to prove.
But the good thing is it's an or. So it's either that there was a gain or there was a loss. I think the gain in a case like this is much easier to prove, even if it is, obvious for us to see. If it was
clear, it's the basis of the conviction.
It is the basis of the conviction. But now from their plea, I just want your take on it. Their plea to the court that they be given a non-custodial sentence because they are parents who have dependents.
Are you disputing that?
Are
you disputing that they are parents
who have dependents?
She's disputing the fact that they're pleading.
When they were stealing, did they know they were parents?
They didn't think they would be caught. This is, I like how you said corruption. We've watered down that word. So actually corruption is seen as a really good kind of like street cred to have, right? If you're going to do anything political in the country.
Let me
also,
ask you,
Eric,
Mariam.
These dependents were named in some of these criminal cases.
Okay, but the dependents go beyond even just the immediate family.
Okay, fair.
But no. if had this been you, you've been found guilty. The law allows that before sentencing, you're given an opportunity to plea for mitigation.
Yeah.
What would your plea be?
No.
Would you not say,
I keep pole.
I
made a mistake.
They said that.
I made a mistake. What I am willing to do is give this and this amount back to the state.
Okay.
All the amount.
To the ESCC, yes. Yeah, 588 million shillings back to the state. And any interest I have gained from that money, whether it's whatever, however, this is my plea in lieu of a sentence.
If I was the judge,
so you want not to be sentenced?
Yes, of course. If it's me, yes, you're saying, come on, that's exactly what I would say.
He's saying, put yourself in that position. People do plead. To his point, it's hopefully, again, I keep talking about precedents. This sentencing needs to send a message so that you think twice. And that even if you think you've gotten away with it, but I don't know, because I keep saying they're in bed with each other, and whether the systemic challenges, because again, these cases sometimes take so long, or sometimes they're thrown out or withdrawn. There's systemic challenges also. We need to speak to those. And maybe what your organization is doing or what it has done to interrogate those systemic changes that really enable a lot of these corruption cases to just be stretched out for the longest. I don't know whether we can briefly comment on that. I do know we need to go to a break.
Yeah. Let's take a break. When we come back, you'll comment on that. This is Fixing the Nation, one conversation at a time. Our guest today is Dr. Kawive Wambua. He is the Executive Director of Inuka, Kenya Nisisi. right? And that organization plus others like Transparency International and Kenya Human Rights Commission come together and they call themselves the National Integrity Alliance, pushing for integrity and standing right there and monitoring and advocating that we all live with integrity. This particular case of Ferdinand Waititu, his wife, and 3 others who were found guilty yesterday and they are to be sentenced today is what we are discussing. Is this cause for us to celebrate that because a former governor has been found guilty? Is that a good thing? Is that a point we say, yes, we have won something? Or is it not? Let's also hear your comments on social media, on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and everywhere. And we'll be sampling some of them after you come back, after the break.
Mahali ya kusisimua na yenye mvuto. Kutoka mashinani hadi mijini.
Zaidi ya madaktari 200 wameweza kuanza mgomo wao rasmi.
Serikali ya kaunti inaendeleza miundombinu kuhakikisha kuwa maji inapatikana kwa urahisi.
Ni chimbuko la habari zinazokuhusu wewe.
Kupata ID, sisi tulikuwa kama alias ambaye wamekuwa discriminated.
Michebebe is very nutritious, very chlorophyllous, very delicious, but less malicious.
Bila chuku, bila upendeleo. Taarifa halisi na asilia kutoka kwa wananchi kwa ajili ya wananchi.
Ndilo kero la taka ambao umeshuhudiwa katika mji huu wa matunda.
Kama serikali hawajachukua hiyo hatua, sisi wa Orma tutachukua hatua.
NTV Mashinani. Kila siku ya wiki saa 12:30 jioni hadi saa 1 jioni.
Alma and Alvaro made a deal so that I would think the wedding was somewhere else.
Why do you say so?
Because only Angela can keep you away from everything. She is the only reason that you'd fight the way you did with Samantha. You tore me to pieces when I found out that you were with Angela before me. You married her before you married me. Will you both stop fighting? My brother is really in love with you. I've never seen him like this before. Don't you feel a thing for him?
You are the one.
With just a payslip, get a mobile loan of up to 500,000 shillings or an unsecured loan of up to 9 million shillings. Visit a Cooperative Bank branch today. Cooperative Bank. We are you.
Pretty, pretty girl for me. Tricky, trick, I don't know how you do me. Tell me that you never leave me. I'm not so seeing it. Pretty, pretty, pretty girl for me. Tricky, trick, I don't know how you do. You got me falling for you. Tabasamu, baby.
To get through the tour by Element LA, dial star 812 star 801 hash.
Nation.
My name is Eric Kibuba. I am currently the chair of the NSK Nairobi branch. The second edition of the BD Golf Classic is an important event for our members, for all advocates, because it is one of the forums through which we are going to be creating networks and relationships. I would like to really speak to the need for members to show up, for the simple reason that we are now always online meetings, online calls. And as a branch, we are very keen on creating forums through which members can meet physically. Golf is one of those things that provides an avenue for fitness, creating of networks, and building of relationships. This tournament is open to anyone interested in just learning golf. You can sign up for this event by reaching out to the LSK Nairobi branch secretariat. So, learned colleagues, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to a day of fun, golf, excitement, networking, and building of relationships on the 28th of February 2025 at the Royal Nairobi Golf Club from 6 a.m. in the morning. Karibuni sana and see you there.
Hustle is survival.
When a loved one's lost.
Catch these exciting shows only on Maisha Magic Plus on DSTV channel 163 and GoTV channel 3.
Hi Kenyans, this is Daniel Muridhi Kaburia, the Secretary General, Kenya Junior School Teachers Association. We as JSS teachers are fixing the nation, but we want Kenyans to know that all the monies that have been sent to schools in the name of capitation, the monies are not benefiting the learners, but heads of institutions in collusion with the immediate supervisors, that is sub-county directors, and the auditors are consuming the monies.
Observe Nation. We are proud to be in the Amboseli ecosystem.
Observe Nation. Sisi ni wanafunzi wa Evangaro Amboseli. Tunafurahi kuishi na wanyama. Tunapenda kutunza mazingira.
You know, someone has texted me and saying, Ati, those girls are saying wanafurahi kuishi na wanyama.
But we coexist with them.
It is how it comes
in
on.
its
Like,
ecosystem.
Please remind the world that we coexisted with these animals way
they
before
are in Amboseli.
you came to gaslight us about how
Their
we are
school is in
finishing the
Amboseli.
animals.
Right?
We refuse. We refuse. I
Maybe
love
this
what
is
they've
why
said.
people have some very strange perceptions of us. They think you go to school, you ride on your giraffe. So that's maybe because we say things like this.
Yeah, I was in school briefly outside and they'd be like, oh my God, you came here by, we'd be like, yeah, we came with an elephant. That's how I arrived here in your country. Let them sit with that and
Via
think about
elephant,
it.
you know.
So how do you send a video to us on WhatsApp Nation? We encourage you to do that.
Landscape. I used to do portrait a lot. Some people still do, but if we can encourage you to use landscape, say...
What is landscape for those who are listening? Lalisha Simu.
Lalisha Simu on the side. Useme naitwa Janet. I come from Mombasa and I'm happy. Niko kwa beach. Naji-enjoy. WhatsApp Nation. That's it. Just send it. Send us your love. Send us your rants. Send us your excitement, your hopes, your dreams. 0112 500 400 challenges. The director is saying, please add challenges. We do want to hear your challenges. The teacher who spoke earlier, we celebrate you. Thank you for just calling it as it is. So we encourage you to send those to us, 0112 500 400. Spread the word, tell a friend, tell your family, and send those to us on WhatsApp Nation.
Kabisa, kabisa. Our conversation is on the...
Philip, send your WhatsApp Nation with your challenges. Director Philip. There's something in a kuuma. Onge kutoke.
Pia wewe una qualify.
Yes.
Kama Mkenya.
Yeah, kama Mkenya. So our conversation is on the conviction that we saw yesterday, Waititu, and for others who've been convicted, they'll be sentenced today. Comments are coming in. This is Morgan Dave on Facebook. Read what he's saying.
Good morning. Let's hope this will not happen like the Waluke's case. I believe we Kenyans love corruption because in the evening or tomorrow, you'll see many tribesmen coming out to defend Waititu, calling it a political witch hunt. Waluke was also re-elected after being found guilty. That is spot on, concerningly spot on, because we do that. We are so quickly enamored with these people. It's this complex layer of loyalty and identity and aspiration. You see him, he's a governor, he made it. And then we forget that he had a duty to actually look after you and your interests. So I think Morgan is onto something.
He really is. Tibbs Muge is asking a really good question on YouTube. Should murderers only be charged when their victims prove harm? Right.
Say again?
Should murderers only be charged when their victims prove harm? Because in this case, right, if we have to prove that the people of Kiambu suffered a direct loss, or that he suffered, Waititu and family got a gain, like a significant one, why is this burden of proof on the victims? yeah, should a murderer only be charged when their victim proves harm. Alafu on the export of processed nuts and unprocessed nuts, Renson Kyoge says, open up the export of unprocessed nuts. The more the customers, the happier the farmers. Isn't that the cause of the problem? And it's a conversation. Yeah, macadamia.
Yeah.
Yes.
Indeed. There's a question that you asked Dr. Wambua before the break.
Yes.
Repeat the question.
I did repeat the question. I just asked about how it speaks to these broader systemic challenges, because you find that these cases are either drawn out, at length, or there's always, there's surprises. We'll wait to see what the sentencing is. But how come, what speaks to those systemic challenges when it comes to trying to hold criminals and hold them to account?
What makes corruption attractive to many people is that you can be involved in a corruption scandal and you stay for 10, 20 years out there enjoying your loot. And then when you are sentenced, it's such a small or insignificant sentence that you don't feel it. So many people, there's no sufficient deterrent. The law we've seen is also very weak in terms of offering but sort of deterring people from doing it. Because 588, 1 million, that's fine. So the other one, proof whether there was harm, you can actually get away with it. And I think it's because most of the people who make these laws or who are beneficiaries of corruption are in charge of our polity, of our governance. So it's a more complex web of issues. And I think we should, as a country, be brave enough to say, can we have stiffer penalties for people who are engaged in corruption, and a mechanism of enforcing them, and with speed.
I think the speed bit is a critical one, because remember, all these people, they've been found guilty by one court. They have, of course, the right to appeal. And they've got to keep going higher and higher and higher into the other courts. Before these people actually pay the fine or the penalty or the jail term, they'll have gone to appeal. They'll probably appeal before the appellate process and say, don't take me to prison yet until you determine whether I'm actually guilty. And so it goes on and on from a lower magistrates court to a high court to the court of appeal. And how long does that take?
Let me tell you.
That's how we end up finding, like, for example, now the case of John Oluke, who was later now found not guilty by a court of appeal. But in the intervening period,
he was elected.
He was elected. He was living his life. He had not paid a fine. He was free. But you see now, if you look at it from the other end of justice, the fact that then later he was able to prove to the Court of Appeal that no, the conviction of the lower court was wrong, that if you look at it from that angle, as an individual, I appealed because I believed I was innocent, and the Court of Appeal agreed with my plea that I was innocent. So it should not have been right to have taken me through the punishment of the lower court.
But you know,
how do you balance this?
You know, Latif, let me tell you, that particular clause in the Constitution, that particular article of until they exhaust all avenues of appeal, was actually inserted in Parliament after the Constitution had been cleared by citizens and taken to Parliament. They added that clause and a few others.
Right.
So basically, what they are subjecting, or what now Kenyans are subjected to, is the discussion of whether or not you are guilty. And the question of integrity walks out the door. Because the moment, you know, I can be unfair to you and say that you are a thief. Well, actually, I'm just bad-mouthing you.
Yep.
But it is possible to determine cases of bad-mouthing and cases of stealing. Real cases of corruption.
Right.
So, the fact that you have been mentioned or you've been investigated and found that there is a case is sufficient for you to be removed from leadership. And I think that's what integrity is about. Go and prove your innocence, but don't come
in the
near
meantime,
the
kwanza
table.
kaa kando.
Yeah, kaa kando, enda udili na mambo yako, alafu ukuje.
I agree on the account of not seeking elective office, not occupying public office. But on going to jail or serving the jail term or the penalty, that's why I'm asking the question. These people have been found guilty by a chief magistrate. They can appeal to the High Court. They could be found guilty. They can appeal to the Court of Appeal. Then they are found not guilty. Okay? So that final level where they've been found not guilty is the final one. Mm-hmm. Now, if Waititu goes to jail today and he's appealing while he's in jail, and then let's say the High Court says, actually, you are not guilty, is that not going to be unfair on him?
No, I
serving that jail term
I
for the
think
4 years through the appeal process.
No. You see, once a court finds you guilty of something, then you are sentenced to serve a jail term. As of that time, both the court and yourself, the court is right, and
guilty.
you have a right to appeal. But you are
guilty
appealing when you are in jail. So if you adduce more evidence to prove that you are not guilty, and it is found you are not guilty later on, because it's your right. Article 48 of the Constitution is very clear. Everybody has got a right to access justice.
Yeah.
Okay? So the appeal is a right. So when you appeal and you found not guilty, it does not mean the lower court was wrong. It just means at that point, you are guilty. So because they did not have any other evidence that was adduced by you or by your lawyers in court to show that you are not guilty.
Okay.
Maybe when you go for appeal, you bring new evidence. Yeah.
Okay. I want to disagree with Latif, actually. Back to you shouldn't run for elective office should you have a court case. So here's the thing, though. From a justice perspective, innocent until proven guilty, fine. We can raise questions of integrity, which are all fair, but someone will come and say, it is unfair that you keep me from holding elective office while this court case is ongoing and we are not sure of the outcome, whether I will be guilty or not, right? Is there then a way to have like some expediency, some speed as far as corruption cases are concerned? One, for public interest, and then two, so that we also have a nice, neat bow as far as your integrity questions are concerned. I'm like, I won't bar you from holding public office because you have an ongoing corruption case. I will, however, make sure that by the time we are a year to elections, we've decided, are you guilty or not? Is that something that makes sense?
The question of speed, like we said, is necessary that it is done. But for me, it is the question of the foundational question of, if, ESCC is an organ of state that is empowered to do investigations and find certain things that are not in the public, that we do not know. If they say that there is evidence, that they have evidence that you stole, why would you say that you run for office as you wait to see what is happening? You need to clear with this first, because fine, where will the public office go? Go clear your name and then come to public office. That is what we say as NIA. We say, if you have been indicted, if you've been found to have a case that needs to be adjudicated through the court system, don't start confusing us, because you will start using the platform of elections and public office to your benefit.
Don't start confusing us.
When is the last time? No, when is the last time that
the
Aisha Juma case was listened to? Wow. When is the last time?
Lord knows.
That's you see the kind of people that we have here.
Can I ask you, around like Inuka, the role of citizens and even the role perhaps you're playing to either inform the justice system, give recommendations, walk us through that. We talked yesterday about citizen vigilance. We talked about the fact that we are the eyes, right? People on the ground, citizens watching, listening right now are the ones who should essentially be really putting that pressure on. Walk us through what Inuka is doing to either educate citizens as well as any kind of like reform systems.
I think Inuka, Transparency International, and KHRC have got ongoing programs of awareness creation, of building capacity of citizens in terms of how do you track the expenditure of public resources, social auditing, and all that. Just saying citizens that got a right, especially now, to document. Because the problem is that documentation is usually done by certain specialized quarters, and then that evidence can walk away. It can, when it's going to court, it takes a detour because of those interests. So we're saying citizens should be able to start documenting cases of corruption and misappropriation, so then that we can be able, as citizens protecting our wealth, be able to provide this in case it is needed. Sometimes what lacks in prosecuting corruption is what evidence is there. Then number two, just saying, although in the public domain, our leaders continue discouraging citizens a lot because they are the ones who benefit from corruption. It's saying, how do we, when we are talking about elections and leadership, how do we not vote for people who have, whether proven or not, allegations of being corrupt? I think that's a starting point. So if somebody is alleged to have been corrupt, you tick them off completely so that you don't think about them. Because when you elect thieves or people who are said to be thieves, then you're legitimizing corruption. So that's another call that we are saying. And then the third thing that we are doing, especially on the red card, is to do our own research and findings and publicly campaign for these people not to be elected. Right. We talk to ESCC and we say, you know, don't allow these people to go for elective politics. But there's a huge gap in the institutions. ESCC, ODPP, and IEBC don't work together. So ESCC gave in the last elections, was it 219 people to IEBC? Don't let these people into the ballot. Right. IEBC said, we don't have...
Nothing stops me, man.
We won't. So all of them were allowed in. So ESCC was left there with, you know, that
so they should work. Yeah, I think that's a really good recommendation to get these bodies to actually collaborate more.
I mean, in an ideal world, because if you're getting a recommendation from the state agency in charge of ethics and anti-corruption, and it's telling you usiweke uko ballot, and you put them on the ballot, then how do we also hold you accountable for that decision, right? Because that is clearly against national interest, against the Constitution's, you know, pronouncements on integrity, etc., for elected officials. So then how do we hold them accountable when they fail us, whether it's EACC, whether it's IEBC, how do we hold them accountable?
I think these institutions, there needs to be a mechanism. Like for example, the most recent one, the withdrawal of the cases, those several
high-profile cases.
High-profile cases that were withdrawn by the ODPP. And we went to, we gave a statement, we went to court to say, give us the reason why we withdrew these cases. And that has not been adjudicated yet. So ODPP must be responsible for what they do. IBC must be responsible and say, do these institutions work for us? Because if somebody has been said to have stolen money, which is Kenyans' money, and then you as IEBC approve for them to go to the ballot, then who are you working for? Who are these institutions working for?
Kawive, what's the place or position of citizen agency? Like Janet asked earlier, which is what we were discussing yesterday. Citizens vigilance, citizens agency. Mariam raised very valid points as we were discussing this, which is citizens bandwidth. Right? I mean, I have so many things I'm dealing with, and I'm listening to Kawive Wambua saying, you know, citizens need to start documenting, tracking these things, the progress, bandwidth. Balance between the bandwidth, there's so many things that you need to do, plus also holding your government accountable, plus also, you know, where
the line niko na shida zangu nisikize zako kwa nini?
I feel like I have a recommendation, but I want to hear what
how far do we push citizen agency? What should we rightfully expect of ourselves as citizens?
You know, as citizens, we have actually set up and funded institutions to do that work for us. That's it. I mean, it's not your duty to go and arrest a corrupt person. Even if you do a citizen's arrest, you take them to the police station. Now they can be released by the police station without referring back to you. So there are agencies that have been put together, institutions that we have said, constitutional commissions that we have said, these ones are the ones who should do that work. They are not working. Right now, some of those constitutional commissions are defunded. Like the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, the Gender
and Equality Commission.
You know, they are not functional. They are shells of themselves. Now they are being populated with the sycophants. So we have been let down on that end. The other thing is that as citizens, we have been, you know, sort of bombarded with so many things: needs, shift, education. There's so many things happening. So, as citizens, we are sort of
overwhelmed,
tired. So this can easily, say, and even when we do positive things, they are sort of watered down by the system, by the structures, by the leadership. So it's possible for us to get tired. But honestly, this country is ours. Whatever little you can do must be done.
How do we do that? How do we fix it? We have institutions. Those institutions also need to be oversighted by us as people. Okay? And it appears that those institutions are failing. It points down to either the citizens or having dropped the ball, in my opinion.
I don't think so. We are not going to gaslight Kenyans. Kenyans have done a lot.
Yeah.
It is the apparatus of state that is actually coming up and destroying even the resolve that we have. If you look at, there's a case ongoing now of the killing of young people in the streets. And there are, people come up and say they are not the ones. Do you know, if you are shot, there's a bullet. That bullet can be tracked to a gun. And that gun is issued from the armory to a specific person. Why are we having a discussion? Why can't you just go and follow that in and get the gun and get the person that put... It's a neat case. So why are we having a discussion?
I think one way to approach it is think of the way, I don't know whether this is, chamas operate in the sense of, I think if you have a group, whether you're friends or family, sometimes I'm too practical and pragmatic, and you step away from the fact that it's a good thing. Take turns to keep track. Take turns.
Or to plan a timetable.
Honestly,
okay.
I think so, because then if Mariam is having a week, let her have her week. Eric, maybe next week you're the one who'll be saying, I'm burnt out, I'm tired. As we speak right now, I have 1 or 2 friends who have said, I love you, I just need a break from the news cycle because I'm overwhelmed and I'm triggered and I'm tired, but I'll come back in March. Right? So we have to obviously extend grace, but keep watching and listening. Nobody go away. But do the cycle thing. Come back and say, Daktari, this week you keep track and update us. Because I think to his point, we do have a duty. I know we get tired, which is why I'm saying everybody has their moments. But can we be a bit more intentional and say, can we just do this as friends or family? And keep your pulse on this. Let us know. If you need some downtime next week, I get it. But let's circle back so that once every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we're sitting down to say, okay, what did we find? Who do we need to call? Are we reaching out to Inuka? Are we trying to hold a community conversation on X or on the ground? Are we going to call for a town hall? I think that's what it will take. It's extending grace and balancing. See, that's pragmatic.
I like that very much.
And saying also...
We assign duties.
Yes.
People, there are also social institutions. The church, I think the church can step up a bit and do more because they have leverage. Political parties can, help. Those social groups like the Association of Engineers, Lawyers, and all that. Those people institutions, not only government institutions, can actually step up and help Kenyans in terms of breaking down this, and even including civil society. Basically just saying, even where our own institutions do not work, our people institutions, our social institutions will
work.
Can hold the fort for us.
Enough said. Drop the mic.
Drop mic.
Dr. Kawive Wambua is the Executive Director of Inuka Kenya Nisisi, and that is basically a clarion call in that organization. Arise, this is our country. And yes, let's fix this country together. Our next conversation is what we call Shika Mic. We are giving the mic to a young person who is a civic educator in Nairobi, and he's coming here with a very provocative idea that we want to debate. Even you come and join us in that debate. Okotho Pondo will come and tell us that we should scrap salaries for all elected officials. That's all politicians, no salary. Find another way of supporting them here and there. Lakini mshahara, no.
Apewe soda mbili baridi kwa bili yangu.
That debate is coming up in the next hour. Keep it here. Fixing the nation, a conversation at a time.